listening to Rootbound, a podcast about plants for when you're stuck inside.
This episode of Rootbound is brought to you by Indoor Conifers. Why only bring a tree inside during the holidays? Conifers can brighten your room on any occasion.
Hi everybody, thank you for listening to this episode of Rootbound. I'm the host of the show, and my name is Steve, and Rootbound is the podcast about plants for when you're stuck inside. And each week, I invite a guest who joins me on the show to share with us all about a plant that means something to them, and I share with the guest about a plant that means something to me. And through this process, we can all learn more about plants and learn more about each other. And if it sounds a little bit different today, it's because I'm sitting on the floor with my wife, Karla. And we're here. This is actually Karla's been on the show a lot, but this is going to be the third episode where she shares a plant with us.
I'm honored.
But before we do that, this is episode 105 of the show, and if you do the math, this is basically like one episode after 2 years worth of shows, right?
Amazing.
So
congratulations.
Thank you. And so I was thinking that's kind of like I'm entering my junior year of plant podcasting. And so that's why I asked you to prepare a short plant quiz for me.
Amazing.
To
I love it.
test my knowledge to see if I deserve to continue being a plant podcaster or whether I need to go back a grade or something.
Oh, man. Maybe I should have made this quiz harder.
Well, it's okay. The audience can play along too. And so yeah, I'm hopefully glad it's not too hard. All right. So before we get into the plant stuff, Karla is going to give me a very short 3-question plant quiz. I'm ready. Here we go.
Yes. Okay. All right, so question number 1. Name one difference between plant cells and animal cells.
Plant cells have a cell wall.
That is correct.
Yes. All right. Woo! We have a little xylophone from our kid here. Yeah, but the mic to it is better. All right. That means I got it right, I guess.
Can you name another one for extra credit?
Oh, shoot.
For extra credit.
I know.
One should be relatively obvious that plants can do.
The cell wall one was the obvious one.
Sure, but
they have,
what can plants do?
They have chlorophyll.
Well, chloroplast.
Chloroplast. Oh, right. Yes.
I mean, chlorophyll.
Chlorophyll
is the chemical.
Chloroplast.
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Cool.
I don't know if it's in the I assume it's in the chloroplast.
I think it is.
But yeah. Okay. Question number 2. Name at least 3 parts of a flower.
Okay. There's a bunch. And I just, in an episode recently, which I think you haven't heard yet, I was able to remind myself the difference between the anther and the pistil, which are 2 things. The anther is a male part where the pollen is, and the pistil is which receives the pollen. Petals, sepals. There's the
So that's 3.
Okay,
so good job. But so according to my research, the pistil has 3 parts. It's the stigma, the style, and the ovary.
Right. The pistil has the stigma on it. The anther is on the other thing.
Yeah, the stamen has the anther and the filament.
Right. They're
but you named 3. You answered my question. Good. Named 3. So
I still. Yeah.
Okay. Could you name the oldest living organism on planet Earth?
We were just talking about this with our friend Maggie a couple days ago, briefly. The bristlecone pine.
Well, yes, an example of the bristlecone pine. That's a species.
Methuselah
Correct.
is the name of it.
That was an extra credit. What's its name?
Okay.
And then yes, it's the longest living organism. That is not a cloned living organism, a non-cloned living organism. And for extra credit, do you know how old Methuselah is?
I thought 5,000 years old or something. Nice.
Yay.
All right. I passed. I can keep podcasting about plants.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick little pause here, and we'll hop back in with some plants.
The test is over.
Hi, Karla.
Hi, Steve.
Do you have a plant to share with us today?
I do. Well, I have a species of plants to talk about with you.
Awesome. Well, I know what it is, but share it with the audience.
Yes. So the species of plants that I'm talking about is the chili pepper.
Okay, and first of all, why is the chili pepper meaningful to you?
Well, I love spicy food, so that's one. And also, as you know, I'm not a big lover of fruit. Like, I don't love fruit. But chili peppers happen to be a fruit.
That's
In
true.
fact, botanically, they are a berry.
I was just about to say, are they botanically a berry? But I guess that makes sense.
They are botanically a berry.
Cool.
And so I guess it counts as fruit, and quite possibly it's up there with a tomato. Which one is my favorite fruit? The chili pepper or the tomato, because both are botanically berries.
Yeah.
So there we go. They are from so there's several species in the genus Capsicum. And they are members of the nightshade family. And then the Latin name of this family is going to be butchered, but I'm going to attempt it. Solanaceae.
That means basically like
Nightshade.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the other members that are non-toxic and actually can be consumed by humans include tomatoes and eggplants.
And I think potatoes too, right? I think so.
Yeah, I think that's maybe true. I mean, they're nightshades in the Solanaceae family. I don't know if potatoes are nightshades in a different family.
I know. I think they're in the same family. But correct, audience can Google it, but I think they're also in the same family. If you look at a potato plant and the potato flowers, they
do look similar.
They look
Yeah.
tomatoey, chili peppery.
That's true. Sorry, I'm drinking coffee.
That's
Is that
okay.
allowed on
Yeah,
the podcast?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course. Only plant-based drinks allowed.
Well, I mean, it is coffee, so it is
sure.
plant-based.
Yes, indeed.
Mostly. So, yeah, so chili peppers. So another reason why they are meaningful to me is that they originate in the American continent. All species, I believe, of the those capsicum
That's the genus, right? Capsicum.
Yes, the capsicum genus are originate in the American continent. And I find that interesting because I'm from Mexico, and I love everything that stems from the American continent. So as you know, chili peppers are widespread in cuisines throughout the world. And of course, this is thought to have been caused by the Columbian exchange. So, for example, the chili pepper was first introduced to Europe a couple of years after Columbus kind of stumbled upon the American continent. But I wouldn't be surprised later on if we found that there was pre-Columbian trade, just because there's certain places in Asia where it's just really prevalent and it just seems to be so historical. There haven't been studies on that yet, but I'm just on a wild hypothesis. I wouldn't be surprised if
because
later on we find that.
it is a pretty long way around.
Yeah.
When there was, well, actually, it could have gone the other way too, because there was like all that silver exchange between South America.
Oh, sure,
but anyway, it is fascinating.
That's just my wild hypothesis.
Yeah.
I think that could be very likely, and if in 5 years' time we can come back and see if I'm true, if I'm right.
You know what's so super fascinating? Just some aside is that, and I can't think of great examples right now, but there's some genuses that are just all around the world.
Yeah.
Like we recently talked about basswood, linden trees, and there are stuff in that genus in Asia and in North America. But then there's some genuses that only exist in like one area, and that is just so interesting. It's like that, like I don't know.
Yeah, how did that happen?
How does that happen?
Yeah.
And it's very complicated.
I mean, same thing with tomatoes, right? Like they are an American fruit.
Yeah.
So, but now they have been widely distributed, as we talked about last time I was on the show.
Yeah.
So there's 5 domesticated species. And so before I get into, before I get into the 5 domesticated species, when I was doing research, I thought it was really interesting that chili peppers were originally thought to have originated in South America or Central America as early as 15 million years ago. But there's been a study from the University of Colorado at Boulder suggesting that chili peppers have actually been around as early as 50 million years ago, and were present in human settlements in North America as well around that time.
50 million?
50 million years ago.
Whoa.
Yeah, I thought that was surprising. Just, how early humans used chili pepper.
Yeah, what humans were those 50 million years ago? Is that still Homo sapiens?
I don't know. I was wondering. I was wondering about that because I kind of prepared everything with the assumption of 15 million years ago, but then I was like, wait, 50? Like actually 50 million years ago? So I thought that was pretty interesting. And so there's studies that suggest. So this study kind of used. Oh no, sorry. Hang on. Let me back up.
Okay, sure.
There's been different studies that not only show like the origin of the different species, the domesticated species, or I guess subspecies. No, different subspecies.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, they're probably different species, but there can be different domestications of
like
the same
cultivars.
genus.
Yeah.
No, those are different, right?
Yeah.
There's the species and
there's
a genus and species, but then you can have cultivars of the same species.
Right. So I'll get into that.
5 species, or are there 5 cultivars?
No, there's 5 different species.
That's okay.
And
that
then
makes more sense because there's way more cultivars than
that. As soon as I said it, I was like, oh wait, no, hang on.
I'm actually still a little.
So I'm not only talking about one species. Let me go back and correct my earlier
talking
statement.
about a whole genus.
I'm talking about at least 5 species within that genus.
Okay.
So
I'm actually really excited about this because I think I just realized now that I assumed that all chili peppers were the same genus, like tomatoes or like.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
And then as I was doing research,
not the same genus, the same species.
Same species, right?
Okay,
yeah. So
sorry,
I was
lots
surprised.
Of word confusion here.
Yes, sorry about that. So there's the 5 domesticated species, and I'm going to go through them and also going to butcher their name.
Cool.
So there's Capsicum annum.
Mm-hmm.
There's Capsicum baccatum.
Mm-hmm.
There's Capsicum chinense.
Mm.
There's Capsicum frutescens.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Capsicum pubescens, which I wonder why it's called that. I didn't really understand.
That pops up every now and then as a species. You know,
I wonder what it
and
means.
I don't know why.
Okay, cool. Me neither.
I'll look it up later the next time the pubescence shows up.
Sounds good. And so there's been studies of where they originated and also where they were thought to have been first cultivated. And so the one that's most studied is Capsicum annum.
Which is the annual, I assume.
That's what it comes from, but that's incorrect, obviously.
It's not an annual?
Isn't it? Wait,
Yeah,
what does annual mean?
Annual means the plant grows up and dies.
Oh, then
every
yes,
season.
that is correct. It's not perennial.
Right. Yeah.
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 Thanks.
Yeah. No
I
problem.
was like, wait. Yeah. Well, I mean, but they all are annual,
yeah,
right?
sometimes they're like, that one's the annual one, and we'll figure out the rest later.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, it is thought that they all still stem from somewhere in South America or Central America. But a couple of the species were first domesticated from like their wild types in Mexico. And the 2 species that are thought to have been first domesticated in Mexico are Capsicum annum and Capsicum chinense. Which is confusing.
Yeah.
But let me go on. So Capsicum annum has your regular, well, not your regular, but like your pretty widely used chili pepper varieties. So there's the bell pepper, there's the jalapeno, there's the serrano, there's the Thai pepper, there's the poblano, there's the cayenne, there's a pepperoncini. So like the banana peppers. So like the ones that are like used pretty commonly in cuisine.
Those are all capsicum.
Those are all Capsicum annum. And of course there's others, but those are the ones that I noted. And then there's the capsicum chinense are the ones that are the super hot peppers.
Oh.
So that's the family that has habanero, that has the Trinidadian scorpion, that has the ghost pepper, that has pepper X.
Pepper X.
Pepper X is apparently the hottest one, which I will get into
okay,
later.
Okay. That is fast. Those are different species.
Those are different
Habanero
species.
and jalapeno are different species.
Apparently, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then there's the capsicum bacatum has and so the other three species, bacatum frutescens and pubescens, it's not super clear, but it's thought that they were first domesticated in South America, specifically Peru, Bolivia, and then bacatum potentially has in Argentina and first domesticated. But I think the consensus is mostly like Peru, Bolivia. So, and so those, especially the capsicum bacatum, are the ones where you find the ají family.
Oh, okay.
So bacatum is the ají, like ají amarillo, and all of those that you find in like Peruvian cuisine, for example. Frutescens has the Tabasco pepper.
Interesting.
And there's a couple of other ones, and those I think are more used in Asian cuisines or African cuisines. So there's like the other examples that I found of capsicum frutescens are piri piri and xiao mi la.
Huh. Interesting.
And then capsicum pubescens, that one is really, I think, mostly used in South America, because I didn't recognize the examples so much, but the examples I found for them were rocoto and manzano.
I've heard of rocoto before, I feel like.
So I've never seen them in cuisine, or at least not knowingly. So yeah, those are the five species. And I find it interesting that all of the super hot peppers are in the one species. I was surprised by that. So yeah. So speaking of super hot, I actually didn't learn about the Scoville scale until I was like a full-on adult.
Yeah, I feel like that like popped up in like the internet world.
Oh, okay.
I mean, now there's that whole show, Hot Ones, that's all about it, right? It's all about the Scovilles.
Right, exactly. But I feel like I was like 25 plus when I found out about Scoville. Yeah. So it was like definitely post-internet, age. So, which is funny because I, right before that, I just enjoyed how hot a pepper was, and I didn't really think about like the scale of it. But according to NIST,
they've standardized it. NIST is standardized?
I believe. Well,
wow.
I mean, I found the article from NIST.
Interesting. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I mean, they standardize
it does make
everything.
sense. Yeah. So, it was this like Scoville scale, was first established in 1912 by a pharmacologist named Wilbur Scoville. And so the scale goes from 0 to, as much as you want. And so 0 being bell pepper, and then 3,180,000 being pepper X.
Whoa.
And that's the one that I've found to be the hottest so far.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so, just for comparison, a jalapeno is at 2,500 to 8,000, and habanero is between 100,000 and 350,000.
Wow.
So that's, pretty nuts. And so, yeah, the unit is Scoville heat units, so SHU.
Interesting.
Which I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
One note on that, I'll find a link up in the show notes, but there's like these guys out there who are like working on breeding hotter and hotter chili peppers, like, as, like hobbies and stuff. I don't know if you have anything
I think that's what Pepper X comes from, like, and like all of the other ones, like the
Ghost
Trinidadian
pepper,
scorpion and the ghost pepper, I think come from
selective
breeding.
Yeah.
But there's some hybrids I think that they're working on between the capsicum chinense and the capsicum frutescens to make them really, really hot. So just
interesting. So there was an article recently about one guy who is like one of the leading breeders of hot chili peppers. I don't know anything about the name or whatever, which pepper it is, but the story goes he was the leader of the hot chili peppers. Not
like the red hot chili peppers.
he was the guy who had he had made the hottest pepper. And then just recently, he came out again, and he like came out with the even hotter pepper. But the story is that he invented this other hot pepper like several years ago, and he was just holding it and waiting for someone to come out with a pepper hotter than his previous hot pepper.
Oh.
So he could like trump them with the hot, even hotter pepper, but then no one did, and he's like, okay, I guess I'll put out this other hot pepper.
Oh.
Which makes me think he probably has a hotter pepper in his back pocket.
In his back pocket,
Yeah.
just to, yeah.
So there's that, like, that's a pretty interesting world of these like people who are like trying to make the hotter and hotter peppers.
So the other thing that's not super clear to me is like how exactly you measure Scoville heat units. I think it's based on capsaicin, but nowhere has a source actually come out and said plainly like this is based on capsaicin. That's just my assumption. And my assumption is based on apparently the pure capsaicin is rated at 16 million Scoville heat units.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. So you're just like looking at capsaicin concentration.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but no source has actually like plainly stated like Scoville
must
heat
be
units.
some
I mean,
way.
sure, I just haven't found it.
Yeah.
So because what else could it
I
possibly
guess
be?
you could like do it with like a panel of people and they like
Yeah.
compare things.
No, and that is like how you do it, but it's like what is it based on? Like is there, especially if NIST is involved. I guess maybe I can dig deeper into it.
Yeah.
But you know,
It's
anywho,
interesting. Yeah. Because is it just capsaicin or could a pepper have other attributes that make it seem hotter?
Well, it's not just capsaicin. There's like capsaicinoids. So like it's like capsaicin and related compounds. So those could also be hot.
And different combinations of
yeah.
different ones might make it be hotter than
Yeah.
other ones. Or
I
like,
guess
yeah.
so. But and also, you know, if you kind of make a pepper hot, it'll feel hotter. So
Interesting.
when you taste it. But so yeah, while we're talking about capsaicin is like the primary molecule that makes peppers hot. And it's a pretty cool molecule. It's not very soluble in water. Its solubility that I found is 1.3 milligrams in 100 milliliters of water.
Okay.
So that's not very water soluble. And, you know, I read a paper or several different papers that suggest that one of the reasons that humans started to use chili peppers in their cuisine is because they have antimicrobial properties. For example, and you know, antifungal properties. So that's helpful for food safety and food storage. And so, you know, when you're an early human trying to not die of food poisoning, I think adding chili peppers to your food is probably pretty smart. And of course, that's its primary use is just for enjoyment of food. And I saw a study mentioned from like the early 80s where a couple of scientists pretty much said, you know, we don't really know why people are so hooked on spicy things, because it's initially their property is kind of a negative one, right? So it's like, oh, it's really spicy, but other plants that have initial negative properties, kind of like the bitterness of caffeine or like tobacco, those have also addictive properties, which is why they've come into the whole like human culture. Pretty heavily, but it seems that peppers don't have this, you know, the quote unquote addictive properties. But maybe it's just the hypothesis, and at least in the early 80s, was just that it's kind of like a low risk thrill, kind of like going on a roller coaster. Like you know you're not going to die, and it's just kind of like a fun thrill, quick thrill. So so maybe it's thought that you know, at least in the early 80s, that's what the hypothesis was.
I mean, we have these guys trying to make hotter and hotter peppers and
for no reason.
There's like an entire super popular internet show where people just eat odd things together. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have this written down, but one thing I read is that capsaicin does not affect birds.
Yes, that's right. That's kept coming up. And so that's another property of capsaicin. So there's a common use is just in food as a quick, low risk thrill. But there's different uses of capsaicin that I found recently. Is, for example, as a topical analgesic. Which, I'm just like, how does that work? Because if you got like, chili pepper on like an open cut or like on skin, it starts to irritate.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know how that works. And then another use pretty recently is that maybe it could help reduce peripheral neuropathy. So like, nerve damage. But I think that's still kind of understudy. And of course, another major use is as a pretty big irritant. It is used in pepper spray, which don't spray that on yourself. That's a pretty heavy irritant, could be kind of damaging. And also as a pest deterrent, but mostly for mammals. So like if you don't want deer to come eat your plants, maybe you want to spray some capsaicin, things like that. But importantly, it does not affect birds like it affects mammals. It just kind of goes through them. So as a plant, that's pretty cool for you because birds will eat the fruit and then spread the seeds.
So that's what I found super interesting because it's like these plants who are like, hey, we want to be spread by birds, so we're gonna make this thing so the mammals don't like them and only the birds do because mammals are too slow for us. We want the birds to spread the seeds more, and then humans come along and we're like, we like it.
Yeah, and then we spread it worldwide.
That's
so
true,
it kind of worked out.
Yeah, pretty fascinating.
It kind of made me think of that one. What is it? The Botany of Desire.
Oh yeah.
Is that one of the plants?
It's
in it?
not.
No. Maybe, should it be?
It should be, but it's not. Yeah.
So that was my fun little research project into chili peppers because I love them.
Excellent. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Okay, there's a real ding now. Okay, thank you for sharing about chili peppers with me. Do you mind if I share a plant with you?
I would love it if you share a plant
Actually,
with me.
can you just open the door and let the cats in? Because they're meowing
they
in the
meowing?
background. Yeah. And while you do, I'll pull up my notes about the plants here. And the cats can... Come on, Meon. Come on in. Come on, buddy. Okay.
He might just meow in our faces.
Yeah, we'll see. Oh, here he comes. All right. Meon is going to join us for this segment of the show. Okay, so since you've been on the show, you first shared cilantro.
Yes.
And then you shared tomato.
Yes.
And then you shared chili pepper.
Yeah.
And it seems like we're missing just one major ingredient to have a nice salsa, and that would be the onion.
Yes.
So I chose the
I love
onion
onions.
as my plant. Hi, Muon. Hey, buddy. Sorry, the cat is distracting. So yeah, onions, I think onions, they're maybe not especially meaningful to me, but I think they're just meaningful to everybody. They're like a real, staple vegetable. Yeah. They're used in so much stuff.
I mean, that's one of the 3 ingredients of a mirepoix.
Yeah, they're just super key. So that's why they're meaningful to me. And there's some really fascinating things about onions. Let's get into that stuff. Okay, first of all, I like talking about the names of things. Did you get into the etymology of capsicum at all?
Oh, man, I forgot to. I also forgot to share the sorry, can we go back?
Yeah, just quickly.
Because you asked me about the fresh versus dry varieties.
Oh, yes. Oh, right. I did ask earlier about the fresh. Let's save that for the final segment. We'll do that. I think we've got time for that. Okay.
Okay.
We're going to talk about names of fresh versus dry jalapenos in the final segment.
Okay.
But back to the onion. The Latin name, Muon, come here, buddy. I'm going to pet this cat so he doesn't meow during the whole podcast. The Latin name for the onion is Allium cepa.
Allium cepa.
And so alliums is a big genus that we eat a lot of stuff. It's garlic is an allium, leeks is a allium.
Garlic. You mentioned garlic.
Garlic, leeks, some other ones I'm not thinking of right now.
Field garlic.
Yeah, field garlic. Yes. And allium, from what I understand, is the Latin name for garlic.
Yeah.
And I think there was a bunch of a time where they were referring to a lot of those plants as allium, and so cepa is, I think, more of a common name in Latin for the onion.
Okay.
And cepa is where a lot of words
Yes.
like cebolla in
Yeah,
Spanish.
I was
and
literally just going to say that.
I think in Romania it's like cepa or chepa. A bunch of other languages have that as the root for the word. But the word onion, which is in English comes from French, also comes from the Latin. And it was another name for onion. And from my understanding, it is actually it comes from the word unio, which is actually related to the word union.
Oh, okay.
And onion and union are related in the fact that I guess they would refer to the onion as the unio to differentiate it from garlic, which is not unified ball. Like the onion is
Clever.
a unified ball,
Yeah.
and the garlic has these separated, so it was the unified allium.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting that the word onion and union actually have an etymological connection, which is kind of fun.
That's fun.
The word chive is an Old English word that comes from the cepa root,
Yep.
which is interesting as well. Allium cepa, and this is a direct quote from Wikipedia, is exclusively known from cultivation. Its ancestral wild origin form is not known.
Oh,
Which I think that's so
what?
fascinating. Like the plant has been cultivated for so long.
That we've just lost track
We
of
don't-
it?
Yeah, so we only
That's
know it's a
fascinating.
cultivated variety.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's been cultivated for at least 7,000 years, and it originates in Western Asia.
I bet you know that also has antimicrobial properties, which is why people used it in early cuisine.
Early cuisine, and also I'll read this quote from this article I found called "The Effects of Allium cepa and Its Active Constituents on Metabolic Syndrome." I didn't get anything about the specific study, but in the intro to this study, there was this really great paragraph which talks about its medicinal uses through time.
Yeah.
And it says, onion has been utilized during thousands of years for remedial purposes. For instance, it was used by athletes in ancient Greece for purifying their blood and rubbed down by Roman gladiators to firm up the muscles. Hippocrates, the Greek physician, prescribed onion for diuretic effect, healing wounds, and combating pneumonia. It was recommended by medieval doctors to alleviate cough, headache, snakebite, hair loss, and other diseases. And this is my favorite paragraph here. In traditional medicine, onion has been used for a large variety of ailments such as headache, fever, toothache, cough, sore throat, flu, baldness, epilepsy, rash, jaundice, constipation, flatulence, intestinal worms, low sexual power, rheumatism, body pain, muscle cramps, high blood pressure, and diabetes.
Interesting. Wait, for against flatulence?
I assume so.
I thought they caused flatulence, or at least that's what the movie The Crow led me to believe.
Is there something about that in the movie The
Well,
Crow?
yeah, because like when the little girl first meets the cop
don't
who's
remember this.
investigating her friend's death. And then he's like, "Oh, hey, I'll buy you a hot dog." When she's like skateboarding down, he's like, "Hey, I'll buy you a hot dog," and he orders some onions on his hot dog, and she's like, "No, thanks, holy onion, because they make you fart."
I don't remember that.
Oh my
part,
gosh!
But
Well, ex little high school goth obviously remembers.
the thing that connects it to me, I don't think I've ever had that experience with onions, but the thing that connects it to me is there's this dish that I've never had, but I was reading about because I was reading about making cheese, and there's this kind of cheese in Germany, and it's called Handkäse,
That sounds awful.
which means hand cheese, and it's because like it's just formed by hand. It's not with a mold. It's like a fresh cheese formed by hand.
Fair.
But the way that it's served is called Handkäse mit Musik, and they serve it with chopped up onions.
I remember.
And there is
this.
like something like why is it called hand cheese with music? And it's like, well, the music comes after. Is the joke in German. Anyway, so apparently you can cure that too, I guess.
It can cause
a
it
little bit
and
of-
cure it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
Amazing.
like a lot of like foods, I think that are like really have become key to humans. They end up being used to treat a ton of different things.
Yeah.
And I think there's some evidence that there is antimicrobial properties, and there's other things where onions are,
Well, I mean,
are useful. Yeah.
they have like sulfur compounds, right? So that's the antimicrobial property right there.
Yeah, let's actually get into that.
Yeah.
The thing that makes your eyes water when you cut an onion
Yeah.
is a chemical called synpropanethyl S oxide. Just don't look at anything else in my notes. Just look
Yeah.
at the word.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Propane thiol.
Propanethyl. I will also read directly from Wikipedia here because I wanted to get this right, how this works, okay? The release is due to the breaking open of the onion cells, and they're releasing enzymes called alanases, which then break down amino acid sulfoxides, generating sulfinic acids. The specific sulfinic acid, 1-propane sulfinic acid formed when onions are cut, is rapidly rearranged by a second enzyme that is called the lacrimatory factor synthase.
Amazing.
And giving the syn-propanethyl S-oxide, and the gas diffuses in the air, gets in your eyes, and you start crying. So it's a defense mechanism for the onion. Like when this chemical reaction happens when you break the cells, these things join together, which is similar to, I had talked about a few episodes about the mustard oil bomb and in the mustard oil family about how similar things happen, and that's pretty smart.
That is pretty smart from the plant's perspective.
Yeah. Here's a fun fact, going back to some stuff about onions. So onions, unlike capsicum or chili peppers, are basically one species. So like red onions, white onions, yellow onions, they're not different species. They're just cultivars of the same species. Right. Shallots are also the same species.
Oh, what?
But
really?
They were only shown to be that in like 2010. They were treated as a separate species. They were treated as Allium ascalonicum until 2011, and then they realized they're actually a cultivar of onion. Now, when it comes to onions, they're normally harvested when they are mature, but you can harvest them early, and that's either spring onions or summer onions. You can use them like that. And then there are certain onions that are bred to be smaller when they're mature, and that's how you get pearl onions or pickling onions.
Yeah.
However, true pearl onions are a different species.
Oh,
those are Allium ampeloprosum. And so you can grow Allium cepa to be small and use it as pickling onions, but there is a true pearl onion, which is a separate species.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty fascinating.
That is cool. And fascinating. Yes.
Okay, just a little bit about their how they work. So they're a biennial plant, but we normally treat them as an annual. Similar to garlic, actually, is that way too. So they need 2 full seasons to grow. So essentially, one season they're going to be storing all their energy in the bulb, and the next season they shoot up the flower stalk from the bulb, right? But we normally pull them before that happens.
Yeah. Well, mostly because you've left. So.
Yeah, and they have to do that too. You can buy onion seeds pretty readily. So there's some part of the cultivation of onions where they're letting that happen to get the seeds. But you don't get the onion if you get the seeds, right? The bulb goes away. They're also a photoperiodic plant, so they don't start making their bulb until daylight hours get under a certain threshold. Right. And certain ones are called like long day onions, and they start doing it after 15 hours. And there's short day onions that start making their bulb after 12 hours. So basically they start growing through the summer, but once the daylight drops below a certain threshold, they start forming the bulb to get ready for winter and to be ready for the next year to push up the flower stalk.
And I remember we kind of touched on this in the first winter episode about the what was it called? The process, the vernalization. Vernalization.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot about that word. Thank you I'm glad that wasn't on the quiz.
Well, clearly I also didn't remember.
Okay, we won't spend too much more time on the onion. There's a lot to go into about the onion. It's been with humans for so long, and it's so important in like tons of cuisines. And it's like the chili pepper went around the world from the Americas. The onion has gone around the world the other way, and like you can't think of there are also salsas without an onion, but it's a pretty key piece for an onion.
Key piece for a salsa.
Key piece for a salsa. certain salsas. Anyway. Yeah, but. And so it's super fascinating. But here's like the last like dazzling detail, which is related to I assume this has something to do at some point with the way because onions make you cry. I guess there's a weird connection to eyeballs here. The mummy of Ramses IV had his eyeballs replaced with small onions.
That's creepy.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I guess...
But, I mean, that's creepy from, like, my modern perspective. But, like, why? So there must have been some good reasoning.
Were, like, treated as, like, sacred in Egypt to some degree. And, like, there is a lot of symbolism about an onion.
Sure.
Like, they're almost perfectly spherical. they have these layers. There's a circle within a circle.
Yeah.
You know, we always talk about layers and onions. Like, there is a symbolism there. However, what's interesting is I think apparently Ramses IV was the only pharaoh to have his eyes replaced with onions. It was like a one-off.
Did he just like onions?
I guess. Or I was like, let's do this. Not. Like, I guess his dad and his son, they used linen to replace the eyes.
Like the material
Fabric.
for
I don't know
clothes?
exactly
Okay.
how they did it, but yeah. But he had onions, and I guess there's no other mummy that they found onions in their eyes. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's weird when there's just like a one-off thing like that. But yeah. But yeah, I think, you know, it is connected. There is, I guess, paintings of onions in like tombs in Egypt, and onions have like, you know, in actually lots of ancient cultures are really important because they have this symbolism. They're like full of water. They're very easy to like put a lot of interesting symbolism on.
They last a long time.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So
That's also pretty key about them. And actually, one of the reasons why they think they were first cultivated is because of their ability to kind of store without doing anything.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is pretty important. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about onions for the moment.
That's pretty interesting. But, you know, I guess to add an extra, personal meaning, do you remember what movie we watched for New Year's last year? The year before this year? This New Year's?
No, but I
Glass Onion?
Glass Onion. Oh, yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
And that's while we were waiting for our little chili pepper to arrive, our little onion to
That's
arrive.
true. That's very true. When you say onions in movies, I just think about the movie Holes.
Oh, yeah.
Where they're like...
Which, we watched when we first started dating.
That's true. That's a really fun movie where they're trying to find onions.
Really great, yeah.
Yeah, so that's...
I don't think they're trying to find onions. I think they just find onions while they were trying to find treasure.
Okay, you're right. Anyway,
The treasure was the onions they found along the way.
Shia LaBeouf's best work. That's all I can say. Well, yeah, that wraps up the onion portion of the program.
Chop, peppers, tomatoes, onions, 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 onions.
We're here in the last segment, and we're going to do a little catch-up on some chili pepper names, and then I have one other little thing to do here at the end of the show before we wrap up. That is tangentially onion-related. So let's do the tangentially... Well, this is not tangential.
This is not tangential.
Specific.
This is very spot on.
Let's get on. So yeah, this is something I found really fascinating. There was a graphic floating around the internet a while ago, and I didn't realize this was the case. And so yeah, go ahead, take over, Karla.
So you asked me to look into or to explain the differences in the fresh or non-dried chili peppers and the dried chili peppers. So there's a jalapeno is a fresh chili pepper, and then the dried version of it is a chipotle.
See, I didn't know that for so long. I always assumed they were different peppers, but
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people do just because they're so different in flavor profiles, but because the chipotle just is so smoked.
Yeah.
It has such a smoke profile. And then, for example, the poblano is the fresh variety, and then the ancho is the version of it when it's dry. And then there's a chili called mirasol when it's fresh, and then when it's dry, it's the guajillo.
Okay, interesting.
And let's see, there's when it's fresh, this chili pepper is called bola, and then when it's dry, it's apparently called cascabel, which is the the little rattle.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And there's a few other ones that I guess we don't have to go into.
Yeah, any other ones we would recognize on either the fresh or the dry side?
Only if you're a chili pepper aficionado
Give us one more.
or Mexican.
Yeah, give us one more.
Okay. Let me. Oh gosh, where did it go? Oh, here. Yeah. So if the fresh is apparently called chilaca, and the dry version of it is called pasilla.
Okay, it's very very interesting. That's I can't think of anywhere else that happens, particularly with maybe with plums and prunes, where right where you call the dry or grapes and raisins. Now I'm thinking lots of ones in English, but it's not super common where you call something different just because it's been treated different, right?
Yeah.
Like sun-dried tomatoes, or just tomatoes. They don't have their own name in English.
Yeah, they're just called sun-dried tomatoes. But
That's pretty fascinating. So thank you for sharing that.
yeah, no,
On
thank
my
you.
side, this is tangentially onion related, but I thought it'd be a fun way to close the show. So I was thinking about the satirical newspaper, The Onion.
Yes.
And first I thought about, well, why are they called The Onion? And on Wikipedia, there's two stories. One is supposedly like the students who started there. I think they were at University of Wisconsin. Don't quote me on that, audience. They were university students, and they wanted to start a satirical paper. And the story is that they were so poor that like day one was just eating an onion sandwich. Mm-hmm. And someone said, well, we should call the paper The Onion because that's who it is.
Yes,
but
yeah.
more likely it's just a joke on a paper that's called The Union,
That makes sense.
which we've learned that those are related.
Yeah, related words.
But to end the show, I thought it would be fun to just read some Onion headlines about plants.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
And I don't know which one's my favorite, so these are not in any order. So the first one is idiotic tree keeps trying to plant seeds on sidewalk. Thought that was pretty funny. How about this one? Maybe hits a little too close to home. Full summer of tending backyard garden produces single edible cherry tomato.
Yep.
Yep. Study finds plants communicate using underground network of spies.
Also kind of true.
Yeah, that's true. Shell announces plans to plant single tree for every irreversible planetary disaster it causes.
I feel like that didn't deserve the
Go the
xylophone.
other way.
It's still too cheerful.
Okay, I got two more here. This one is a little sad too. Dream vacation turns deadly for area houseplant.
Oh no.
Our houseplant survived our recent vacation. And then finally, I don't know why I think this is maybe my favorite. It's just kind of dumb, but it's funny. Nation's houseplants confirm pots are their pants.
I love it.
Yeah. So anyway, that is some Onion headlines about plants, and I think a great way to wrap up this episode of Rootbound. Thank you, Karla, for joining me once again.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Only one?
Oh. My guest on this episode of Rootbound was Karla Arias. Karla is a chemist and attorney. She's also my wife and super cool. If you like Rootbound and you want to help support the show, visit rootboundpodcast.com/support to find all the ways you can help support the show, including supporting the show on Patreon. Rootbound is hosted by junior-level plant podcaster Steve Ellington. Music by Christian Krigaskota. Fake ads by David Lonnie. Rootbound is a podcast about plants for when you're stuck inside, but if you can go outside, gather up some chili peppers, some onions, maybe some tomatoes and cilantro, and make yourself a nice fresh salsa.
Move over, Christmas tree. Here comes the Easter tree, the President's Day tree, and the Arbor Day tree. Guess that one is kind of obvious. Why don't we have an Arbor Day tree? Of any of the days that seem like they would make sense to have a tree inside of the house, doesn't seem like literal tree day makes the most sense. I mean, what's the significance of the Christmas tree to the Christmas mythos? Whereas the Arbor Day, like an Arbor Day tree would literally, like that's 100%. There's nothing else Arbor Day is about but trees. So, if we had like a grass day, then you'd bring grass inside, I'm assuming. But no, we bring it in on Easter. How's that make sense?